Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we're going to be talking, should Matthew Mercer be the main character of Campaign 4? Now, this topic was brought up on one of my most recent streams. I think it was either the last one or the one before that. But I thought it was an interesting topic, and I wanted to sort of go into more detail about my opinion on this, because I think it's actually like a really interesting idea that he becomes a quote-unquote main character of Campaign 4, especially after the 10 years of him sort of being the one behind the DM screen. Now he gets to be a player in a full-on campaign. This is his opportunity to be a quote main character. Now some people are already going to be like, no, main character stuff is very negative. You want to have multiple people be the main character. We don't need another Imogen. I'm here to disagree with that argument because I don't believe Imogen was as much of a quote main character as so many people give her hate for. There's always, in my opinion, multiple people who can be considered main characters of each campaign. If you were to look across all of the campaigns, across all 10 years of Critical Role, there are certain individuals who sort of always rise to the top of being a, quote, main character. In Campaign 1, in my opinion, you had Percy, Vax, and Keyleth. Those are the ones who had the most story and growth throughout the entirety of Campaign 1. An entire arc was dedicated to Percy. The entire, connecting the world and traveling across the world was a thing for Keyleth, and she was, bringing together all the Ashari. And then Vax was the one who sort of had the spiritual journey of realizing where his place was, as far as religion goes, and where his belief is going to be, and how he's going to protect the people he loves. Those three characters, and not to mention the romance between Keyleth and Vax. So those three characters, in my opinion, were sort of up on the highest pedestal as far as main characters go. Underneath that, you would have characters like Vexalia, who's also, relatively high as someone who had a lot of story and growth, just not as much as the other two. And then Scanlan is also on that lower tier. And then below that, you have two people who just didn't really get anything, which would be Grog and, Pike. Taryon Darrington got more than Grog and Pike did. So putting them at the bottom makes more sense to me. So then in Campaign 2, you obviously have characters like Jester, Ford, and Caleb sitting at the top rung of people who are considered main characters in their campaign. And then below that, honestly, I would put everybody else. I'd say no one's like a tertiary character. Everyone's a secondary character after that, with the maybe the exception of Caduceus being the only tertiary true support character, which is kind of what he's built for. So you have main characters in Campaign 2, Ford, Jester, and Caleb. Secondary characters, Yasha, Bo, Veth, and realistically, I'd still put Caduceus and Mollymock there, but if you really wanted to, you could put Caduceus in, true support. So, again, I don't think that so far, there's been, a single person who's been, a standout, but there has been some people who are above others. And then in Campaign 3, again, I believe there are people who are truly above others as far as main character status goes. You have Imogen, Orym, and Fern, and then below that you'd have other characters like Laudna and Ashton and FCG, and then below that you'd get characters like Breas and Chetney. So those, and I would put Dorian sort of in between, I guess, maybe those two things. Maybe I'd put Dorian in like support, third, tertiary sort of stuff. But again, I do believe these rungs of main character exist in every single campaign. And I believe for Campaign 4, Matt should be on that top rung because of the years and years that he's had to sit behind the DM screen and listen to everybody else become one of the main characters. At least at one point in every game, someone has been a main character, quote unquote, with the exception of maybe Sam. So maybe we're not just talking about Matt Mercer. Maybe Matt and Sam should both be MCs in this Campaign 4. Now, to be completely and totally and utterly honest, there is a difference between a character like Imogen and a character like Ford or Jester and Caleb as far as their time in the limelight, right? So Imogen had basically an entire campaign almost built around her seemingly, and then other people were sort of slotted in to be part of that story. I don't think it was initially that all of these characters were supposed to be connected to that same thing, with the exception of Imogen. So characters like Orym and characters like Fern were sort of later inserted into being connected to the Ruidus storyline, but initially it felt like only only Imogen was a part of it. So the idea that the entire story revolves around Imogen is mildly true, because she is an exalted Rootisborn, so an entire story about the Rootisborn sort of surrounded her. Now, of course, like I mentioned, characters like Orym and characters like Fern were able to sort of be weaved into that story later, but the idea of a character being like the entire plot is something we do actually want to avoid moving forward, because a lot of people, if they don't like that character, aren't going to be fond of the story, especially if it mostly revolves around them. So, as far as Mat becoming a main character, it should more so fall in line with characters like Ford, Jester, and Caleb, where they each sort of share the limelight with other people, even their, support secondary and tertiary characters, and not just sort of take up the entirety, kind of like how Imogen, Fern, and Orym took up the entirety of Campaign 3. We should try to avoid that for Campaign 4, and more so focus on being like Campaign 2. Like I always say, if you want to be a good campaign, be like Campaign 2. So I've sort of talked about how we should go about Mat being a main character in Campaign 4. Like, this is the how they should do it. It should be more like Campaign 2. But the why is also very important. So the reason, and it's honestly not that hard to think of why, but he has been building the story. He's been, if you think about it as a play, right? He's been writing most of the world. He's been writing all of the characters that people meet. He's been writing all of like the big events that happen. He has been setting up the entire play, right? He's the one that always, before the play starts, he runs out and sets up the literal set. He the fake trees, he puts them up. The fake house, he puts them up. He's been doing that all by himself. The set design, all that stuff. He's been doing everything by himself back there behind that DM screen for 10 years. And then he lets his friends take center stage. It's time that someone else, which is Brennan this time, is going to be the one setting up the stage, and Mat finally deserves to be center of that stage. He should no longer be standing close to, the exit as an NPC, always having to switch out for another NPC. He always has to do the quick change, if you will, and constantly become a new NPC. He needs to be a centerpiece for once, because he has been the one building everything, and the story revolves around the players. Now, this sort of dives down to into the idea of what's more important, the character's actions or the world that the DM sets up. And as far as Critical Role goes, I believe the player actions inform what the DM does more than the DM doing something that informs the players. I truly feel like the players have more power, and the DM has to be more like responsive in Critical Role specifically. I know other tables are going to be a little different when it comes to all that stuff, but especially Critical Role, it feels like the players are more impactful to things, and the DM really has to sort of, focus on what to do as a response to them. He is the one yes-anding the most, and everyone else is sort of being the one who says something, and he has to respond to it. So I think now it's finally his opportunity to be the one to make the DM yes and. To make the DM have to go over to the side and tear down that fake tree because he just burnt it, and then he has to set up a new set altogether because the player did something else. It's Mat's turn to finally be the one to make somebody else sweat behind the DM screen in true main character fashion. So now I extend a question out to all of you, which is, what would you rather see from a Matt Mercer main character? Would you rather see a Percy-style story where it's an entire arc dedicated to them, and there's 20 to 30 episodes of an entire story being dedicated to only their scenario, only their background, only the characters that they came up with for their story, and then they sort of resolve it all in one? Or would you rather it be more like a Ford character, where it constantly shows up throughout the entirety of the campaign and eventually gets resolved at some point down the line towards the end of the campaign, or even in Ford's case with Uk'otoa, after the campaign ends, where you get like a two-shot for it? So that's my question for all of you. What would you rather see? An entire arc during the campaign, or sort of throughout the entire campaign would you like to see stuff being dotted and thrown at you? Because honestly, I think both works really well if you're trying to establish somebody as one of the main characters of the entire thing. You give them an entire arc, like an arc without being broken up and nothing sort of gets in the way, or you dot things throughout the entire story, like Ford, like Jester, like Caleb, like Fern, like Orym, like Imogen. Or do we truly want to see that like solid arc structure like Percy got? I feel like it's been a very long time since we've seen a character get a Percy style arc. So I'm curious to know what you all think. Should it be more Percy, or should it be more Ford? And yeah, I think that's all I have to say today about this. if I were to be totally honest, I would like to see a more Percy style thing for him, but that's just me because, like I said, I think it's been a while since we've had a true arc dedicated to a single individual. So I think that would be more fun as far as my viewing experience, but I'm curious to know what you guys all think. Would you rather a Percy type or a Ford type? And yeah, let me know in the comment section down below. And I will see you guys on Monday for whatever video I make next, unless you partake in my, sorry, not Monday, Tuesday for whatever video I make next, unless you partake in streams, in which case I'll see you on Sunday and Monday, and then later in the week, Wednesday. So yeah, peace.